Right. Justice and the law are imposed upon humanity by the Creator Lords who govern this universe. For many thousands of years, as a direct result of the total disbelief of the early Jewish people and those who followed them, even from before the time that the Old Testament of the Bible was written, has brought about in the modern world all those people who are of the present Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and many other similar and allied religious beliefs, all of whom are in total ignorance of the real truth as it applies to all of humanity, what humanity is, and the plan for its survival and progression. All the others, the Eastern people, which must include Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, and many other similar religions, listened with reverence and patience to those sent to them, realizing that they obviously had special knowledge and, being more knowledgeable and different to them, were accepted as having been sent in order to bring special instructions from God or the Lords of creation, so that they could have proper knowledge and true understanding. They accepted that this earthly life could only be a little time, a time of learning, that there was a parallel spiritual life, and that even in the physical life we are all both physical and spiritual. They did not refute and disagree with the knowledge given to them, as did the early Jews, and as consequently would any Christian approached by any ordinary seeming person, such as the writer, who had been told the real truth. Some, even today, with irrefutable proof, will choose to disbelieve this message. Theirs will be the greater loss, for only with true understanding and knowledge can there be any hope for the progression in understanding, joy, peace, contentment, and happiness in the modern world of all peoples. It's not only the Christian and Jewish peoples who do not have total understanding, but also some of the Eastern peoples also, who have clung on to so many of their ancient customs and illogical beliefs, many unable to discard them. This they must do, along with all other peoples of all nations, if they are to come to true understanding. Artists such as Hieronymus Bosch and others similar in medieval times spent many hours drawing and painting horrific pictures of what their idea of human punishment must be, portraying dark, sinister creatures who lurked armed with fearsome weapons, forked tails, glittering eyes of a terrifying nature, with boiling cauldrons and furnaces into which the offending evildoers were cast for ever to burn and suffer eternal damnation for their earthly crimes. This idea has very little basis in truth. There are dark planes belonging to dark forces which very well might be compared to hell, painted and described by medieval painters and writers, from which, out of a kind of pre-human memory, such people may well have drawn some of their ideas, coupled with the totally illogical beliefs perpetuated by the early Jews, and later by early Christians who, devoted as they were to their own Saviour and his disciples, accepted only part of the truth given to them, and believed that no matter what they did in this earthly life, the name of their Saviour would be sufficient to absolve them from any sin and expiate them from anything they might have done. How far this is from the real truth, and how misguided mankind has been for so many centuries. If this were so, there would be no chance for the powers of light and creation, which must be only as strong as its members, to withstand the continual onslaught and pressure placed upon it by the dark forces, whose strength is such that only total vigilance and continual effort from all those who must work for the survival and progression of humanity keep these dark powers at bay and prevent them from a victory which would overthrow it in a most terrible way. It must be remembered that this planet is billions of years old, and many civilizations must have come and gone on this planet, and no one knows at this distance in time what forces caused their demise. So it is that all those who receive humanity must live many physical lives, growing in spiritual strength through the knowledge and experiences gained in those lifetimes, until they are strong enough to move beyond this humanity, which for most ordinary mortals may take very many physical years, far more than the one physical lifetime that so many believe to be the case today. There are many time scales on which these lifetimes may be based, and there are many other civilizations in different parts of the universe living on quite different time scales. though similar in every other respect to this humanity. So it is that a very careful plan has had to be envisaged, a plan from which there can be no deviation whatsoever, a plan that must mean that those who transgress against it must come by their own experience to know that their transgression can only mean harm to themselves in the end. Otherwise it could mean harm to many, and the destruction of part of all the civilization to which they belong, which is unthinkable. Progression can only be attained by experience, the experiencing of a certain amount of adversity. The adversity that all humanity experiences in a physical life, an adversity which strengthens and in the end brings all those equipped with humanity that wish to progress to a greater degree and have a real understanding and knowledge of the way humanity can only move forward with love and care for their fellow man, and of how creation must work, and of how each one of those who progress ever upwards and onwards must work, live, and have their being, no matter in whatever part of the universe they are placed. Like all other organizations similar to those on Earth, there must be a central government in which are many departments, all of whom have their special task, and all of whom work together to the greater glory and easement of management of their universe. One of these many departments, just exactly similarly as it works on Earth, must be the Department of Law, presided over by those designed by the Creator Lords to be high judges. They have also their courts of law, their places of imprisonment, instruction, and the vast storehouse in which is kept a complete dossier on every single soul that ever gains humanity. Everything that could be is known about each and every one. So it is that as his or her life and subsequent lives proceed, careful watch is kept on each human being progress, the way he or she carries out all the tasks that fall to them, every thought, every wish, be it voiced or simply quietly spoken within the confines of their own minds. All these things are known and totally understood by the Lords of Justice, who have been appointed for this task. At the end of each life, then, a careful assessment must be made, and then the story of that life carefully considered with great care. Some blameless and good have suffered much. To them retribution is owed, and they are given a life in which they seem to prosper and have opportunities not given to others less fortunate. Some thus placed make good use of these opportunities and help others. They are twice blessed, and those who will progress in spiritual strength and move on to greater lives within the universe. However, there are those who, given a life of prosperous retribution, selfishly keep their good fortune to themselves and share it with no one, not even members of their own family. They are working against themselves, and in the end will be required in subsequent lives to pay retribution until they can come to understand fully the folly of total selfishness and disregard for others. Some are cruel to others, heartless to members of their own family, greedy, mean, boorish, and many other unpleasant human failings known and perfectly understood by all of humanity. All of these things are carefully considered. When this story is completely told, some explanations of some of the retributions given to certain people and why will be given. No one is ever perfect, but everyone is helped to progress by the experiences they gain by living their numerous lives, whether they are lives of deserving privilege or of well-deserved retribution. It must be made clear to all of humanity so that they can understand how it is that we must be judged and made to learn and progress for the sake of the strength of the universe. It's hoped that mankind, with deeper knowledge and with greater understanding, will come to greater kindness and to more nobleness of mind and spirit that has been hitherto impossible. It's hoped in this way the planet Earth will come nearer to the kind of world it should be for the sake of the millions of people who live upon it. A careful glance by any living person at all those known to him or her in the physical life that they are living, not only within their own family but also others also, will reveal that there are very few educated and intelligent people who are thoroughly wicked, but there are many who have unpleasant traits, and that without these traits they would be better, nicer people. This fact applies to nearly all of humanity. How dreadful it would be if all those who are not perfect were cast into hellfire or eternal damnation. Even those who are extremely wicked have some good in them, and it is to this good that those that decide our fate look to try and turn them towards this better side of their character. This is sometimes successful, but even in the case of those who do not turn towards goodness, even these are rarely destroyed altogether. Much has already been explained in all the other dictations which have been given to the writer. In the reading of them all and the careful consideration of the message they contain, understanding and knowledge will gradually grow in the hearts and minds of those who have the wish and will to acquire such knowledge. It must be finally understood that hell, so often described by is nothing more than a hell created in the spirit of the sufferer himself. So often such people refuse to consider that they have the power to consort with spiritual agencies with which we are all surrounded, waiting to help us. Hell is self-inflicted, as is nearly all the suffering all around and everywhere in this physical world. Only a deep and true understanding of this important fact can help mankind to avert it, and also from his own efforts to create a better world for himself. This is my comment. To clarify the last paragraph more fully, we all have experience of being in some tight situation and might exclaim something like, "Oh dear God, help me," even when we have no real belief in any religion. But strangely enough, we are all helped, sometimes in a miraculous way. Conversely, a friend might be telling you of a lovely holiday or opportunity that they have been offered, and suddenly a mean and jealous thought, such as, "I hope they have a rotten time," comes from nowhere into your head. In fact, you don't think anything of the kind. It's almost as if someone else is speaking into your mind. Most of us dismiss such thoughts immediately, thinking, where did that come from? These are the good and bad forces with which we are surrounded, and who try to influence us for good or bad. Most of us never give such things a thought, but they are still there, and their effects push us backwards or forwards depending on how we react. I feel that I must mention the beginning of this chapter, which appears to be giving the poor old Jews a drubbing again. Most of us have been brought up to practice one religion or another. Some of us continue devoutly to practice this religion. Others pay lip service to it, and others give it up altogether. All these religions started with beliefs and practices of the people of many thousands of years ago. Were any of us to meet and discuss our modern beliefs with such people, consider them superstitious beyond belief, fear to an absurd degree, and practically unhinged. The world was, after all, a very different and dangerous place. There was no security for anyone, no proper laws. Much of the population was half-starved, and death and disease stalked the population, rich and poor alike. Recently I've been reading Jesus the Man by Barbara Thiering, and find the beliefs, practices and lifestyle of the Essene Jewish sect to which Jesus belonged almost impenetrable to my modern-day mind. How much of their influence went into Jesus' teaching we will never know, and what he left behind has been totally destroyed by a combination of the Jewish leaders of that time and the Romans, as is common knowledge. The Jews were constantly in conflict with the Romans and believed that any saviour that came to them was going to be some glorious military leader. And to be fair, why wouldn't they? Rome was a constant blight on everyone, and people lived in constant fear. Gradually, the different teachings of Jesus have doubtless been adulterated by those disciples who came after him, many of whom probably did not really understand all that he was teaching. And later by the early Christian movement, and then the Romans themselves, when they decided that it would be their state religion, of course mixed in with their own beliefs. This has then been further adulterated by the Catholic Church, and then every other religion that has any affiliation to Christianity, and you get what we have today. A few Bible stories and the real Christ being somewhat of an enigma. Doubtless very much of what has come to my mother in the form of these dictations would have been lost on the population of Jesus' time, very few of whom had any education and lived a hand-to-mouth existence, and the thought that they were going to paradise after their short brutish life was over would have been their only consolation, and would explain why so many Christian martyrs were prepared to suffer so dreadfully for their faith. Perhaps it is the innate goodness in many of us that has meant that we now do not want to see someone hanged or burned alive in public, or go to watch some poor soul fight to the death, or to be torn to pieces by wild animals at the Colosseum, or any other similar establishment. So gradually we are improving as a species. We are also protesting about these wars that are constantly breaking out in this planet. No man wants to be sent to war that he has no part in making, only to find himself being expected to kill other men with whom he has no quarrel, just because they are from another country or race that their politicians have decided is an enemy. Yet we are all inspired when we are able to do something positive to help others, and this world could be so much better if we foster this spirit within us and join together to help each other no matter what country or creed we belong to. And that is the end of that.